at the University of California, Merced, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. First, please join me in taking a deep breath. We take that breath from the many Black lives that no longer can. Thank you to all of you for joining us today from different spaces and places virtually. We are deeply grateful that you're making the time to join us in this celebration of solidarity and moment of silence. We come together today to affirm Black lives at UC Merced across the nation and across the world. While we honor the names and lives of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Stephon Clark, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, and countless others. Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Nina Pop, Tony McDade, Monica Diamond, Maurice Gordon, and Freddie Gray. There are too many that we know, and some we may never know, because so many have lost their lives to systemically racist practices and policing. We ground this in the historical context of August 1619, when a ship appeared near Point Comfort, a coastal port in the English colony of Virginia, carrying more than 20 enslaved Africans sold to the colonists. The enduring legacy of slavery still exists today, more than 400 years later. Institutional and systemic racism still persists, and we are here to say no more. As I processed with my family and friends, I recalled the countless times I had been stopped by police for no reason, and our right to shop, live, and go about our daily routine had been called into question based on the color of our skin. We may be coming together in solidarity and for a moment, but this is more than just a moment. This is a movement to not leave things as they were, but a movement to create things as they should be. A movement to solidify what it means to be anti-racist, what it means to push for the dignity of all, and what it means to center equity in all that we do. We have a few speakers lined up in today's program where we center campus-wide voices, specifically Black voices. We will collectively read our campus statement, and at the end, I will come back to you with a call to action, a call to act towards that movement that we so desperately need, and to act so that we eradicate the dehumanization of Black lives. Now, I'm proud to welcome my friend and ally, Interim Chancellor Nathan Brostrom.
Thank you, Danya, and good afternoon to the UC Merced community. And welcome to this virtual event where we can gather together and share in the pain and outrage that we all feel for the senseless deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others. It is good to be together in this unsettling time, and it's healing to share collectively in our grief. As Danya said, we also need to move beyond statements and words to look at our actions, and actions that can further the healing and start to address at both an individual and societal level the systemic racism and injustice that plagues this country and has for over 400 years. My thanks to Danya for organizing this gathering, and my thanks to all of you for joining us today. Let me turn it to our Provost, Greg Camfield.
Thank you, Nathan. We are commemorating the death of George Floyd, whose murder under the cover of authority is just one of countless examples of violence inflicted on Black men and women in the United States. In commemorating that death, we are not only grieving the loss, we are also claiming what we value, that Black lives matter, and that it is time to enact that simple truth. Simple truth, that we are all one people, that every human being exists only as part of a community, as a product of love, that every culture knows this truth, preaches it, that we as social beings become our best selves when we act out of the knowledge that we are deeply connected. So why is this simple truth so hard to live by? Shortly before her death, Maya Angelou suggested that we all have empathy, but that we often lack courage to display it. There's much truth to her idea insofar as we sometimes think of empathy and the love on which empathy is based as soft, sentimental, to be hidden from others so that we don't appear weak. It's a dangerous lie to think of love as weak, and it's a perverse cowardice to fear what links us together. But there is more than simple cowardice at work. Humans may run on love, but we often love the wrong things. Like geese that see moving machinery before they see an adult goose, we imprint on ideas that impede our connections. We take into our hearts images and ideas that destroy rather than connect. To change the metaphor, the overt racism that is common in our reactionary time is only the virulent outbreak of a vicious disease. The silent reservoir of that disease is in implicit ideas of hierarchy and in the social structures that maintain those ideas. That ideological and structural reservoir must be emptied if we are ever to eliminate the illness. Paradoxically, these pernicious ideas, structures, and practices impede empathy, but the only way we can beat them is to engage, practice, and strengthen our moral empathy so that we can see racist ideas wherever they hide, can tear down racist structures wherever they are, and can disrupt racist practices in our everyday interactions. To end behavior that tacitly disinvites Black and Brown people from full participation in our society will require those of us with privilege to humble ourselves, to listen with our hearts open, and to share the fruits of privilege we did not earn. To do less is to fail to learn the lesson of this memorial, a failure that we cannot afford. Lydia?
Dear UC Merced community, my name is Lydia Hyla, and I'm honored to be Sorry, I think it cut out right there. But dear UC Merced community, my name is Lydia Hyla, and I'm honored to be able to participate in today's moment of silence for George Floyd. While most of us did not know George Floyd personally, the magnitude of the effect that his story has had on us is incomparable. George Floyd was born on October 14, 1973 in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and was raised in Houston, Texas. He played basketball and football in high school and was characterized as a gentle giant by many of his friends and family. He attended South Florida Community College and Texas A&M before returning to Houston to become an automotive customizer and play club basketball. Later in life, Floyd became involved with his local ministry, Resurrection Houston, before eventually moving to Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2014, where he worked several jobs to build a life for himself, including truck driving and security jobs. He recently lost his security job due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Like all of us here, he was just a normal person living his day-to-day life. On May 25, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by police officers in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He pleaded for his life for 8 minutes and 45 seconds, while a police officer brutally held down his knee onto George Floyd's neck. George Floyd did not deserve to die like this. No human being deserves to die like this. These police officers are the reason why George Floyd's loved ones are now mourning the loss of a father, a son, a brother, and a friend. He leaves behind 5 children, including his 6-year-old daughter, who has touched the world with her statement, "My daddy changed the world." On behalf of the UC Merced undergraduate community, we grieve for George Floyd and for the many others who have lost their lives prematurely due to police injustices. We hurt for George Floyd and for all those whose names we do not know. Let us not take George Floyd's death in vain, but instead celebrate the life he lived and continue to uphold everything he stood for: love, equality, and action. That being said, I urge everyone here to continue speaking out for these injustices and doing your part to ensure that George Floyd and all other victims of police violence receive justice. Thank you for all that you've done, George Floyd, and may you finally rest in peace. Now I pass it on to Jamie Moore.
Thank you, Lydia, for that important context that guides our action today. Thank you to the EDI office for this event and the opportunity to speak. My name is Jamie Moore, and I come to you as a Black mixed race educator and graduate student. I come to you as an educator first, as a professor and equity chair in the community college system that has worked through and is weary from the roadblocks our institutions of higher ed place as a barrier to direct action. We must not waste this moment, be afraid, or tiptoe around the fragility of professionals who missed the critical education of cultural competency in their decision to work in education. We must be critical and innovative in supporting and celebrating our Black students. We must do so despite our past complicity in an institution that is designed to do the opposite. As a PhD student studying pedagogy, I'm struggling to find mentors, to find women of color on our campus to support this work, women of color not burdened by an anxiety-ridden, often unfair tenure process that limits their effectiveness in the university. I struggle to build community with a cohort of students of color who are trying to engage in research, but are plagued by self-doubt, which has a particular history of being insidiously embedded in the messaging to Black students and women of color. The wounds of our community are deep. I stand firmly with the demands of the Black Student Union, of the Black graduate scholars, of the CRES faculty, and remind us all that this is a time we need humanities more than ever. Merced prides itself on our diversity, on our first-gen population, and I found myself after one semester here with a collection of experienced aggressions, and because of this, even though I returned to grad school with my own teaching experience, found myself suited with enough imposter syndrome to face the same question of belonging I watch my undergrads face each semester. We must listen and actively dismantle the inequalities and privileges embedded in our university at each level. We need clear expression of the plans for direct action from each level, and we must believe in each other. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie, for such an excellent and encouraging speech. Hi, my name is Lois. I'm a second-year PhD student at UC Merced. The issue of racism and racial injustice has been persistent and has not been solved yet. This means those on the other side, including Black people and people of color, have a lot of learning to do in order to defeat this issue. I encourage us all to listen more and humble ourselves to learn in order to find a cure for this issue. We have all heard the cry for change recently with regards to the death of our own brother, George Floyd. In the midst of this, we need to acknowledge that change is like a marathon, but not a switch that goes on within a fraction of a minute. Like a marathon, it will be characterized with those who may give up along the way and others who will continue to press forward until the finish line. In order to have a collective goal, I encourage us all to pick up those who may fall along the way as we embark on this marathon of change and as we fight for equality for people of color. Let's keep fighting. Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Louis. Good afternoon, UC Merced students, faculty, and staff. My name is Priya Lakareddy, and I'm the president of UC Merced Staff Assembly. UC Merced Staff Assembly stand in solidarity with the Black community. We are outraged by the killing of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officers, the tragic loss of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and countless others due to the long history of racial violence is deeply saddening. These horrific events represent systemic issues of racism, inequality, and injustice. We must acknowledge that we're not all equally affected by structural racism. Hence, we all share a responsibility to create positive change and to engage in process of listening to, learning from, and amplifying Black voices on our campus and in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. UC Merced community, my name is Latrice Curl, and I'm the Associate Dean of Students in the Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities. I also serve as the co-chair of the Staff and Faculty of Color Association. And today, we want to say that we see you. As Black folks and folks of color, we know that sometimes the skin we are in makes our walk through the world different. The Staff and Faculty of Color Association focuses on advocacy, healing, and growth. We're here to support our staff, our faculty, and our students as we navigate these times. Please know that we stand united against the violence perpetrated against our communities and the everyday injustices that we experience. People have asked over the last few weeks, what can we do? The list is long, but please, please stay engaged. When the protests get quiet and the lead story in the news changes, anti-Blackness and racism will still exist. We must commit to find new ways to listen, to stay invested, and to take action. As a campus, as an organization, as individuals, we want to support our community and to look at our policies, our programs, our practices, and find the possibilities. We can do better, and we must. Our very lives depend on it. Thank you.
Hello, I am Asmarit Asafal Burhe. I'm a professor at UC Merced and chair of the Academic Senate's Diversity and Equity Committee. I thank the EDI office for organizing this event. I'm here today. I'm outraged, heartbroken, and yes, angry by the never-ending murder of Black people. I mourn for and honor the lives of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and the many other innocent Black human beings whose lives were taken by senseless violence at the hands of the police. I feel this pain in my core as a Black woman, mother, wife, sister, and auntie to precious humans that I love more than myself. I want to use my voice to amplify that Black lives matter. I stand against anti-Black racism that's fueling these acts, and I condemn police brutality towards Black people in the strongest terms possible. And as a Black scholar who's been part of the academy that lacks representation of Black people and where harassment and discrimination have long limited recruitment, retention, and success of people who look like me, I want to make sure we don't pretend that this is just other people's problem. As educators of the next generation of scholars, we have to boldly stand for justice and acknowledge that the academic institutions that we're part of are built on racist and colonial systems that were precisely created with the culture of exclusion in mind. These historical structures have remained intact. And even with all the talk of diversity in the academy, the needle has barely moved on demographics of Black faculty and senior administrators in universities, even right here in our campus. And demographics of an institution speak volumes about the culture, climate, equity, and inclusion. If you speak to any Black student in higher education today or in the past, they would tell you that in many ways, The academy is like a vicious obstacle course that Black people have to suffer through to reach successful completion of our education. The system is riddled with lack of support, bias, harassment, and discrimination. So it's past time that we embark on a path to make some desperately needed changes to address issues that affect Black members of our community. And the change has to start with us here. And here at UC Merced, we can start by honoring the demands that were first made by the Black Student Union. In addition, we need to prioritize the welfare of our Black community members and build accountability mechanisms to address unethical treatment and hostile workplace climates for Black people. If we want to seriously honor these lives lost and the continued pain that's felt by the Black community, we need to use this moment to accelerate our efforts to seek justice in everything that we do. Thank you. And I'll pass it on to Whitney.
Thank you, Esmerette. And I just want to say I support you and celebrate you as the first Black professor at UC Merced. Thank you for doing that work. And I stand with all of the demands that you just shared now. My name is Whitney Pirtle. I'm a professor in sociology here at UC Merced. And I started working here in 2014, which coincided with the last nationwide Black Lives Matter protests and clashes with state forces. At that time, I signed something called an open letter of love to Black students, Black Lives Matter, which was headed up by Black academics at the Black Space blog. I wanted to reiterate what they wrote today, but have edited it a little bit to be specific to our campus, and including what I've witnessed here and also quotes from students that I've been doing research with on the anti-Blackness they experience. So this message is really for the students. Speaking on behalf of Black professors. We Black professors want you to know that we see you and we hear you. We know the stories of you having to explain your experience in classrooms, your language, your dress, your hair, your music, your skin, yourself, of you having to fight for all of us in classrooms where you are often the only one or one of few. Stories of you choosing silence as matters of survival. Sometimes we are in those classrooms with you. We know there is always more that people don't see or hear or want to know, but we see you and we hear you. We are here at UC Merced, a minority serving institution that loves diversity. But in my research with you, I have heard you say, quote, I feel like all minorities are definitely discriminated against, but there's just something different, something else about being Black. I don't know, I just feel like people can't relate. And in one focus group, one of you summed it perfectly. I didn't know what anti-Blackness was until I got here, as others in the room snapped in solidarity. And so I join you in naming it what it is, anti-Blackness. And we write this in solidarity with those who have lost their lives, who should be in our classrooms, who should have had the chance to simply be. We write this in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter, Black Trans Lives Matter, and other intersectional scholars that know that when we fight for Black lives, we are fighting for everybody. We write this in solidarity with you, Black students, here and elsewhere, the living and the dead. We hear you and we see you. In our classrooms, we continue to do what we've always done. We teach about race, anti-Blackness, and white supremacy. This has and will continue to put us in positions that we have to defend, but we're trying. We study ourselves, we live Black lives, we organize, we strategize, we march, we teach to nurture and resist. We don't always talk about the letters we write to administration, the angry emails we send, the committees or task force that we serve on, the department meetings where we question and push for more, the colleagues who question our research, our presence, our skin, our manner of being. We do this, but we know that it's not enough. It's never enough, but we'll keep on. We'll keep finding ways to do more for all of us. You already know that your life matters. Know that we're fighting for you and with you, with all of us, for all of us. We see you, we hear you, we love you. I am ready to work to continue that work, and we will not let up on our demands. And with that, I welcome back Interim Chancellor Brostrom.
Thank you, Dr. Pirtle. We'll now read the statement that we put out. In solidarity, we feel both outrage and grief over the killing of George Floyd in Minnesota, Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia. These are unconscionable acts of violence. Their deaths and subsequent nationwide protests once again present our country and each one of us with the imperative to confront the enduring legacy of slavery, segregation, racism, and oppression in America.
It is not enough to make statements and extend our thoughts and condolences. The conditions that have led to unrest did not happen overnight. Institutional and structural racism have long persisted. There's a need for significant and long-term structural changes in policing, wealth distribution, health policies, voting, and education, including higher education. As such, we fully support University of California Board of Regents Chair John A. Perez and President Janet Napolitano's May 31st UC statement on protests, violence following George Floyd's death.
We have to work on ending the conditions that create injustice, conditions that are leaving our Black community dehumanized and their innocent lives taken. While the conditions of the coronavirus pandemic have us grieving, this grief must cause us to take a hard look and to take action against violence, racism, and oppression.
In order to create accountability, we share the following. The university denounces anti-Blackness and anti-Black violence. To continue to address the systemic racism, the university will establish a task force on anti-Blackness and anti-Black violence effective immediately. This task force will include students, staff, and faculty, and will be co-led by Associate Chancellor and Chief Diversity Officer, Danya Matos, and Dean of Students, Jonathan Grady.
Counseling and psychological services will also be partnering with the Office of Social Justice Initiatives and Identity Programs and the Dean of Students Office to develop initiatives and resources around anti-Black violence, radical healing, historical trauma, and wellness.
I will continue to meet monthly with Black student leaders to address their campus concerns. UC Merced's Police Advisory Board provides a forum for the discussion of issues related to policing on the campus and in the community. It meets monthly throughout the academic year and is currently planning its community engagement schedule for the fall. ASECM and the Graduate Student Association appoint new student members each year, and we encourage everyone to get involved and engaged in order to be a better campus to our community.
We will be curating our efforts, which we updated on the Learn More page as we push toward deeper understanding and genuine transformative action. The need for all members of the UC Merced campus community to join as allies to the Black community is imperative.
But this is where we all take a stand, in our administrative units, in our departments, in our labs, in our leadership, and on our campus. This is not the work of one, but the work of all. We know that collectively is the only way. Black lives always matter. They matter at UC Merced, they matter across our nation, and they matter across the world. We will now observe a moment of silence for 2 minutes and 53 seconds, the amount of time that George Floyd laid on the ground unresponsive.
Hello, everyone. I'm very thankful to be here. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to pay homage to George Floyd. I have a piece that I've written that I'm going to perform for you. It starts with a song that you may know, A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today not only to pay homage, but to vie for change. And what is change, you might ask? What does that mean? Well, sit back, relax one time for the one time, and take my class, and you'll see at last. Change is to make or become different. Yeah. You might even say that it's development, diversity, inclusion, revolution. But what does it look like, you say? Well, I'm not sure that we've ever really known, but I could tell you what I think about when I'm at home alone. Change is the dismantling of institutions, systems, cultures, ideas from big business to the university, beyond symbolic gestures that save reputations. It looks like not only listening to, but implementing the things that faculty and students ask for. Then we'll know who's serious about alleviating these fears that we felt through the years. But don't worry, we'll get there. And as we beat our chests and wipe our tears, I would like to encourage you not to forget about self-care. And maybe one day, soon, hopefully, you'll be able to look to the sky and shout like Sam Cooke. There were times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Thank you.
Wow, Dr. Martin, thank you so much. That was so powerful. And thank you to all of our speakers. Thanks to all of you who in this moment, or even before it, were already thinking about what you can and will do. I know many of you have already responded, holding healing circles and highlighting Black voices in your discipline. But it doesn't stop here. We have to ensure that we do more. We will be announcing more of the work to come, but this is our collective call to partner, dialogue, and bring about change. We thank you, but we ask you to think and reflect on some of these questions. What anti-racist practices are you employing? How are you going to take this moment and move it towards transformative change? We are in a movement so that no other Black life will be senselessly lost or dehumanized. Black lives always matter, and we will move forward together in that as a Bobcat family. Immediately following this, we're hosting a facilitated radical healing discussion, and I invite you to join us. You can still go to diversity.ucmerced.events and register, and we'll ensure you get there quickly. Thank you to everyone who made this possible, and thank you to all of you for joining us.